So that is what he is driving at. Is that was actually this globalization, this whole movement, resulted in a change from benefiting the workers, from benefiting the capitalists, and that actually has led to a decline in the middle class. This again, we see here that okay, this market response, what happened in globalization is not only, companies, employers, and the economists as a whole have created a whole new regime that saw a shift from rewarding the workers for their contribution in the increased efficiency and increased output, and creating a band like a connection of lifetime employment, of making sure that people who contribute to the company would ultimately be rewarded and they would have enough money for their pensions. We saw that being broken, and we saw more and more benefits flowing towards the people who own the capital, who make the investment, in terms of higher dividends, stock buybacks that actually inflate the price of the share. So it's not only dividend, but it's also rising stock prices because of this shift in companies to basically be maximum profitable, and actually this makes huge benefits to not only the shareholders but also to the leaders of these industries who work closely together with.
When this tendency started?
It started basically in the 1980s.
1980s. Okay. So lifetime employment term finished before 1980.
Well, it did. No, it's gradually eroded. Gradually eroded. Gradually getting less and less. Companies like IBM, etc. Before, they never laid off anyone. The big corporations, they basically, the profits that were made were shared with the workers. Of course, also we had much more power in the unions, and
before they had power.
Yeah, a lot of power with the unions.
Union had power.
Right. So what we saw actually in that period, we saw wages rising, and because there was much less money flowing out of these companies, there was much more money left in the organization to actually share with the workers. But because now the adagium is to maximize profit for the shareholders, maximize value for the shareholders. That's how you get investment. That's how you can inflate your stock price. That's how basically a lot of these top managers get most of their wages. So there's a really strong incentive for them to maximize their income by focusing exclusively on the shareholder.
Several years ago, please remember Piketty.
Yes.
He said to the one issue, increment of the percentage of the capital, increment percentage of wage. Usually, capital is bigger. Therefore, people who has capital is more rich.
Yes.
The people who don't have the capital, they cause poverty.
Yeah.
And that formula proves rich or poverty.
Right.
That accelerates globalization accelerates that mechanism.
Right. It accelerated it, of course, because basically now labor had an alternative. Before it didn't, because you just had your factory in Minnesota. There's a factory there. You're depending on your labor for the people who live there. They had superior education. They had geographical proximity, so they were not competing with anyone. But all of a sudden, the world became their marketplace. So they were able to put the entire factory in Minnesota and put it directly into India. and pay only 1/10 of the wages that we're paying in Minnesota.
People who live in the advanced countries, they are very happy because they could get a good education and usually they have a banking account.
Right.
But people who live in the advanced country, many people don't have the banking account,
Right.
and they don't have a good education. That makes more distance of the poverty and rich.
Well, actually, what we saw is the opposite, because companies like who would consider to outsource to India, to China, they would get the cream of the crop in terms of education, because they could offer wages that were above market rate in those countries and still way below the market rate in the United States.
Yeah.
So they could benefit from the top workers. Where in Minnesota, the labor supply is limited, right? So we wouldn't always have the cream of the crop, even though education in general is much higher in the United States, but because supply is limited to geographical distance, it would be limited. So actually the quality, the difference in quality between workers inside the United States for the factory in Minnesota versus the quality they would get in India, because like the wages were so much higher than they would get locally, that they would get the cream of the crop at a wage rate, a wage rate that would be way below that in the United States, because the cost of living is much lower. So actually, the quality gap is not that big, even though the overall education level in the United States is much higher than in India. You would get the best people to work for your company.
And here I had fee of the university recently very increased, and many students,
You mean admissions, like a tuition fee, or?
And many students get governmental or school grant, but they should pay the loan after getting the job.
Right.
That makes them very poverty.
Absolutely.
In America, yes.
Absolutely. That is a really big problem.
No.
Because there's no such thing as labor security. So, you know two things. Basically, without education, you're in trouble.
No.
The future. But having education doesn't give you any guarantee that you will succeed. So a lot of people take a risk and say, well, okay, basically I can get the money right now. If I don't invest, I know I will be screwed. But actually, when I do invest, I might be screwed twice. It not only will I not have income, I need to pay off a lot of money. So that's double trouble. But when you're young, what are you going to do? Basically, you need to believe in the American dream. And say, okay, well, I'm going to invest and I'm going to make a success of myself. But not everybody will do that, because what will happen, for example, if you invest and you want to become a movie director, there's only place for like a handful of movie directors. The rest of them will be unemployed. They need to wait tables. They will never be able to recover their tuition fees. These people are in trouble. These kind of professions are really in trouble. So everything is now coming down to the market. And the market is not perfect, as we can see.
Yeah.
The market is imperfect.
So
the system is rigged.
So this video explains that our company is switching from emphasizing employees to more
Emphasizing shareholders.
emphasize shareholders. That causes a fall of middle class.
Yes.
So then what they're going to do now?
What they're going to do, there is no answer to that. There's first the creating awareness. I feel
Recently, American company returned to emphasize on employees now,
right.
Is this a tendency like that?
Well, it's very artificial, right? The only way that they can do it is to create trade barriers, so that ultimately will lead to a slowdown of the economy.